If the phone doesn't ring after nailing an interview, or your boss seems to know more about what you did last weekend than you want, maybe you're not being paranoid. You could be the latest target of employee monitoring. 90% of companies look up a person's online profile before hiring them, but spying doesn't stop once you get a job. As Mark McAllister tells us, be careful what you text, tweet, or email. A Snoopy Boss could be watching.
Once upon a time, after a hard day's work, you could go for drinks with friends or co-workers, and the only thing you would regret is the hangover. But now, chances are every post, tweet, text, or picture is being watched by bosses and recruiters, even private investigators. And if employers don't like what they see, you could be out of a job before you even get it.
An employer could take a look at what you have about yourself online, whether or not you know that it's there, and they can make all sorts of judgments based on that could influence their decision about hiring you.
Mark Swartz knows just how big that problem can be. He calls himself a career activist, or you could call him the online cleanup guy. He has made a career out of helping people revamp their online profiles. We wanted to see exactly what Mark could do, so we looked around the cafe, and Caitlin said she was game to have Mark see what he could dig up.
Before I go through this, is there anything that I'm going to discover that I'm going to say to myself as a potential employer, oh my goodness?
I hope not. I don't think so.
First thing that comes up in your listing is Wikipedia. Within a very few moments, we found out all sorts of information about her. And this included her birth date, where she came from. So things like your age, marital status, your ethnicity, religion, your health status. This all came out within 3 to 4 minutes.
Things an employer can't ask you by law could be out there for the world to see.
She says that she had nothing to do whatsoever with that Wikipedia entry, and it is quite a comprehensive one. Somebody else or some groups or some people have been compiling information about her.
It was kind of flattering, but at the same time a little unnerving that somebody knows so much about me or found enough to be able to compose a page.
In no time, we had a pretty good picture of Caitlin, young actress from Calgary trying to make it in Toronto. And well, speaking of pictures,
Caitlin, I dug down about 10-15 pages into Google because your first number of pages are really quite clean, and I want to get the dirt on you.
Okay.
So it just so happens I found a video reel on YouTube.
A couple of these scenes are lesbian scenes. The story itself was a coming out story of a young girl. There are clips of me kissing another woman.
it may be innocent enough, but Mark thinks otherwise.
This is the kind of information that an employer might base a judgment on that Caitlin has no control over.
And make no mistake about it, a bad online profile makes a difference. Your boss or future boss is watching.
People think, oh, well, this is private, it's just my personal profile, it's not going to affect anything. Wrong.
Ontario Privacy Commissioner Ann Kavukian has seen the change coming.
90% of all employers, all recruiters who are looking at job applicants access their social media, their online social profiles, Facebook, etc. 90%. 72% of those categorically reject candidates for jobs based on what they see on their profiles on social media.
You heard right. These days, you've got a 72% chance of losing a job before you've even got it. All because what you might have already said or done.
If what you put, you're not comfortable with seeing that on the front page of the Globe and Mail, don't put it in an email.
Hit send or post and there's no turning back. If you put it online, it might as well be front page news. And those words and pictures are up for interpretation, even when you already have the job. Social media posts killed the career of a young teacher from Georgia. Ashley Payne was called into the principal's office after posting these holiday pictures.
He just asked me, do you have a Facebook page? And, you know, I was still confused as to why I was being asked this, but I said yes.
School officials forced Ashley to resign because they said the pictures promoted drinking. Facebook, the social networking site for friends, isn't always so friendly, or private it seems. This was one of the better posts made by two former Mazda dealership employees in British Columbia. They were fired after making threatening comments about co-workers, managers, and the business on Facebook.
This is an important case because it set a precedent. It's the first time in Canada and possibly North America that employees were terminated because of their Facebook posts.
Donald Richards represents the dealership where the two employees worked in 2010. The court determined the posts attacked, defamed, and insulted the dealership, justifying their firing.
I think the posts in this case were egregious enough, and they were tied into the workplace. They named the company by name, said they're an expletive joke, don't do business with them, things like that. So naming the employer and doing damage to their reputation.
Posted on Facebook, and it's not so private anymore.
Because of the very nature of Facebook as a sharing site, your expectation of privacy is very low. You can't just say anything on Facebook.
David Fewer is the director of CIPIC, the Canadian Internet Policy and Public Interest Council, a legal clinic that specializes in technology issues, including privacy.
We live in a free and democratic society. Has some of that freedom been lost?
If we turn the internet into a perfect tool of surveillance, it would be a problem.
He says some employers are really pushing the limits and not just watching those working for them, sometimes spying before they even hire someone.
Some employers or prospective employers have said, you know, give us your Facebook password as part of the hiring process. We want to take a look at your social network. We want to see the things that you're not telling us. We all have lives, both online and offline. And now employers more and more are starting to see that people's online lives can have an impact on the employer and are taking an interest in what's happening online.
Next on 16 by 9, is your boss working overtime?
We're going to come in like a SWAT team in the middle of the night
To spy on you.
There's a little thing called employee monitoring, and just about every boss and company are doing it. Up to 80% of employers in North America snoop on their employees, and not just online. 16 by 9 wanted to find out just how it's done in and out of the office.
We do take video and we do take photography pictures, and then we take them back to the employee.
Carolyn Twidell is a private investigator. Employers hire her to spy on employees.
It ranges from anything from time theft, where a manager is suspicious about an employee, whether it be taking hour-long breaks, or we do background checks, or find out that the actually employee is not injured and that he's been in Mexico for a week.
And believe it or not, Carrie Lynn is even hired to go undercover and befriend employees. So be careful who you spill your secrets to, or who may be watching from afar.
We may start off at a job site if it's construction or landscaping, and we might just sit in the area for 8 hours or for 10 hours watching the subject.
Tracking phone calls, installing surveillance cameras, GPS in company cars. What employers do to keep tabs on you is a long and scary list. Carrie Lynn is one kind of detective, but then there's this. Navigant in New York, an international investigations firm that operates in over 120 countries, from forensic accounting to investigating fraud or money laundering. Hired by companies to sniff out any wrongdoing, this is the big leagues. Dave Ehrenberg is the Director of Global Investigations and Compliance Division.
In many situations, we're going to come in, so to speak, like a SWAT team in the middle of the night. You know, if we do it right, nobody knows we were there. So we will come in the dead of the night. We will acquire that data. That data could represent email, could represent personal documents on an individual's computer. It could represent their instant messaging they might do to colleagues, or communications, let's say, they might be happening on Facebook. You're doing this to find the one email, that's going to make your case.
And once they are in, Navigant's team use sophisticated programs to search for keywords, patterns, and dates. Anything that suggests suspicious behavior.
Such as the word hide. We have one case, a money laundering case, and what actually led us to find the email was it said, please stop emailing me about this. Do you know how hard it is to hide the stuff we're doing?
These guys will uncover what you don't want them to. Former federal prosecutor Ellen Zamilies is managing director. She says the days of privacy at work are gone.
Within the company itself, there is usually some sort of standard that a code of conduct that says we are allowed to look at your emails. If you use our email system, you have no right to privacy with that, and that's fairly typical.
So be careful. Any activity done on company equipment, text message, Facebook post, instant message, phone call, or email can and probably is being tracked, logged, and stored by your boss. So bosses can get all kinds of information on you. But Ottawa's critic for digital affairs, NDP MP Charlie Angus, says there's still a few rules they have to follow. Rules outlined by Canada's privacy laws.
There needs to be a reasonable expectation on the employer and on the employee in terms of their responsibilities. So having an employer sit and watch the employees work electronically all day, that's not reasonable.
What the law calls reasonable is one thing, but what companies are actually doing can be another. Privacy czar Ann Kavukian says that can be hard to monitor.
It's not charity. It's not a democracy. This is the job. And if you're at a workplace and they're doing a ton of monitoring, like the phone monitoring, get another job. I mean, there's nothing that says you have to work someplace where you don't like their business practices.
Accept the job and you accept the policies. And that means some employers could be sitting on a ton of information. And according to CIPIC Director Dave Fewer, lawmakers are being left in the dust.
The technology is changing, and the services that are taking advantage of these new technologies are happening at the speed of innovation. And that's hard for the law to keep up on.
Now Ottawa is set to introduce new legislation that could extend Big Brother's reach. If you work for a federally regulated company, that includes big employers like banks, airlines, and telecommunications, soon your boss will be allowed to hand over your work product. That could include personal information, emails, computer and phone records to police, the government, or even other companies, without your knowledge or consent, and fewer restrictions than ever before. This September, Bill C-12 passed its first reading.
This motion is deemed adopted.
Faster than you can send an email. 16 by 9 wanted the Canadian government to explain the new bill. Industry Canada turned down our request for an on-camera interview, instead sending us this message that says, in part, it will allow companies to share their employees' work output without their consent, such as market studies and analytical reports. However, the use of this information will be limited to legitimate purposes.
There's a lot in the bill that will, I think, possibly create much more of an open season on privacy rights in Canada. I think what's happening is we're very much in a Wild West terrain.
Charlie Angus sees a need for change, but says the proposed new laws missed the mark.
We're really concerned about where we're going in terms of the data mining that's happening, and we're really concerned about this whole move towards lawful access, which will allow police to keep an eye on anybody at any time for whatever purpose.
So the next time you go to work, offer your thoughts online, or even vent over a few drinks outside the office, ask yourself, who's watching and what the consequences might be.
Next on 16 by 9, will the government crack down on crime?
People expect that their government will work with the federal government to make sure we have safe streets and safe communities.
Or just empty our wallets?